Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, or regulatory landscape and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining us this afternoon, we have Avaneesh Marwaha, he's CEO of Litera, as well as Cindy Bare, Chief Data and Innovation Officer of Frost Brown Todd. We're here to discuss how AI has transformed the legal profession and the technology solutions that law firms use, and why data security and privacy must be prioritized. It is great to have the both of you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks, and certainly such an interesting topic as the legal profession impacts every industry. Avaneesh, let's talk about the evolution of generative AI in the legal profession. Where are we right now with it?
I think we are in this cycle of we got exposed to it 2 years ago. A lot of money came in, a lot of ideas were created, and law firms have been battle testing the ideas to see how far they can push it. I think now we're in the period of where is application really going to have ROI? Where can it be used safely and securely long term? And where can we use it where partners and lawyers can trust it to go back to it over and over and over again? But I think the initial phase of acceptance is there, right? We went through this whole period of saying it's real. Let's not be afraid of it. Let's play with it. That's past us. I think most of the firms and most industry are now like, they're in. We get it. Let's find the path forward that makes the most sense. Every 3 to 6 month expand use cases. So this period right now feels like the right investment period for firms to dive into.
Yeah. And Cindy, it's interesting when you think about generative AI and its applications. My first thought was, oh, that would be interesting for attorneys and accountants where, 1 to 3 year your associate work, you're so ingrained on a lot of the tools that AI could be used for. So how do you see legal professionals using AI, and how is it improving the quality of their work?
I think one thing, and you mentioned, 1 to first year associates, they tend to do a lot of work that was, frankly, they didn't go to law school to do, right? You're combing through 500 documents to find a particular data security provision so that these two companies can merge together. Now they can spend a little bit less time finding information and a little bit more time learning how to analyze it and, move that company forward with what should be their policy going forward. Right. So we're going to have to think about how we train our junior lawyers a little bit differently, other than through these rote tasks that, quite frankly, AI can do better. That's going to be one of the challenges, but we're certainly very excited about that opportunity as well.
And Cindy, we hear a lot about large foundation models. That's really what's been getting the attention here. Are there specialized AI models that work better for the legal profession than other types of models?
I think the large foundational models, it's going to be hard to not keep up with them, right? I mean, the truth is those are changing and improving all of the time, and they're getting better at doing legal specific kinds of tasks. I think it's a little less about the model and a little bit more about the content that it's trained and grounded in. And so, when you have AI that's grounded in very well regarded legal content, or when you as a firm have good data that's very secure and it indicates your expertise as a firm, that is going to provide better results, right? The models.
And we're going to get to data security in just a moment here, but Avaneesh, when you think about what the ROI is for these AI investments, because there was a quick rush in such a competitive landscape to internally and externally get these products and platforms out there, how do law firms measure the ROI on their AI investments?
There's probably 3 or 4 different things you could look at. One is, what is your end user happiness? Are you seeing associates that were first, second, third year that historically have done the grunt work? Are they happier now in their profession? Are they staying in the practice of law longer? Are they being engaged in the workflow better, right? So that's one measurement. Number 2 is, are you seeing profits per partner go up, right? That's another measurement you can use to find success of, hey, we remove waste from the process. We're seeing that every dollar we bring in is going more into the profit pool. And number 3, which we haven't really talked about as an industry, is, are we seeing new matter creation? Meaning we have 1,000 lawyers, their capacity has just increased because of AI. With the capacity increase, are we actually seeing new matter creation go up to fill the void of available time? So there's probably 3 or 4 different things a firm could look at as near-term and long-term ROI with these investments.
Yeah, I think I would add to that we also want to be looking at client satisfaction, right? So we do client feedback surveys, and we want to make sure that we are co-creating with our clients Especially in the particular industries. Many firms like ours have industry focuses, and we can be working with our clients to create better ways of doing the legal work, right? We don't have to do things the same way they've always been done.
Yeah. Cindy, let's talk about privacy by design for a moment here. When you think about data security, governance, compliance with global regulatory frameworks and so forth, how should law firms be thinking about this? I would think of all industries, embedded data protection and privacy by design. It is the poster child for that.
That's right. And that's why law firms have been dealing with that for years, using trusted vendors like Litera and many others, because that's been important to our clients for many years. Quite frankly, AI, may increase the stakes for that, just making sure that when you're looking at your own trusted content, that you are abiding by our clients' outside counsel guidelines and by data privacy and securities standards. So that is something that we're already very focused on. And I don't think AI has really changed our extreme focus on that.
Right.
Yeah, one thing I noticed, Jill, is it took us 25 years to go from on-prem to the cloud in this industry. It's been a long journey to get there. And then we see things like GDPR in Europe that's allowed the cloud adoption to be more safer for that geographical region. If we apply some of those principles now more broadly across Gen AI, globally, I think we get those standards in place because the usage of Gen AI is actually greater than being in the cloud right now. And a lot of law firms that have maybe avoided that journey are now seeing what it means to invest with and use secure ways of working because it's really important to protect where data resides for your clients long term.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, complying with GDPR, particularly if you are a global company or even if you have access to clients within the EU, you have no choice but to comply with it. So why not be at that highest level of standard? I mean, you can make the same argument too for California, Colorado, their privacy laws have a relatively strict framework as well. But as you see this GDPR-like framework being adopted across multiple enterprises of multiple industries, I think that's a trend to be sensitive about because as legal data escalates, you're going to need enhanced data security and compliance. It's going to be paramount to just as important as the function of the enterprise itself.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We were just responding to an RFP where a client, is very specifically concerned about personally identifiable information. And so, we have to detail how we handle that. We're actually one of the few law firms that use Snowflake. And so we have a very secure, cloud environment available to us. I think in some ways what it really helps us do, once we overcome these table stakes, right? Data privacy and security are table stakes for AI. Having a great policy about checking AI and making sure it's accurate, those are all table stakes. But what we can do now is because we can analyze so much more data, we can, really start doing things for clients that were cost prohibitive before. We can start analyzing all of things at a much larger scale and helping our clients move that forward.
Yeah. Cindy, I would also argue that it's a competitive advantage at this point to be known for having strict data governance and privacy control, whether it's a law firm or any industry. I think that is a significant competitive advantage and something that enterprises are going to consider when they're working with third parties and vendors, supply chains and so forth, because that's where the largest vulnerabilities exist.
That's exactly right. Right. We'll see more, we're even seeing how we can share data securely in Snowflake with vendors and with partners, because the truth is, why move data around anymore, right? You don't have to move data as much as you used to. And so that should help you have a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
It is interesting how that pipe works. Litera wants to be a secure vendor for the law firms. We also want to be leveraging our own vendors in a way that's going to be safe and secure. And who we work with, that whole line has to be very consistent, right? We can't have any gaps in that model that would defeat any sort of security protocol. So if we pick a vendor for storage that isn't safe and secure, then that's not helping us with our customers either. So Litera, for example, leverages as much as possible the Microsoft ecosystem because we just know it's a trusted third party. It's well established. They're global. We can be in every country with them. We can manage with them. So for us, we really think closely who we want to work with so that way our customers find that value through the entire work stream.
Yeah. Well, Avaneesh, let's take a step back for a moment here. How are you working with law firms? What solutions are you providing?
So Litera has a pretty broad spectrum of solutions. I have a bedrock in drafting. We've been doing it for 20 plus years, helping lawyers create their first draft, helping them proofread, compare, negotiate, and close all their documents. We have somewhere around 2.7 million users engaged with our drafting solutions on any given day. We go forward to transaction management. We have the very first AI due diligence platform that came out 10 years ago with native LLMs for legal transaction management. But our core go forward solution is what we call foundation. It is the experience of the law firm. It is their metadata. It is what work they have done in the past, what their clients have been engaged with, what their lawyers have been engaged with, and giving firms access to their data so they can use it in a meaningful way to go forward is what I think sets Litera apart from a lot of our competition. We harness this piece for them and allow them to interact with it very wholesomely. So we find ourselves really involved in not just the practice of law, but very much so in the business of law and where firms are headed.
So let's talk about the rise of AI hallucinating in legal proceedings. We've all heard their stories where the wrong case was cited and it kind of blew up the whole thing because it was irrelevant to the research and what they were trying to go for. You don't want to pull up the wrong case law and make an argument that way.
Mhm.
My view on this is very simple. Since I was a lawyer at one point, and we all learned in law school, double check your work, double check your research. Right. So back in the day, we all read books, but to shepherdize the case law to make sure the case hadn't changed. We went to computers, we started using Lexis and Westlaw. You always shepherdize and double check the case law that was relevant and real today. That doesn't change because Gen AI is involved. Right. Those last steps of making sure that the case law you are citing is accurate, the citation follows all the blue book principles, that hasn't changed. So the practice of law does not change because of your sourcing. And so some of this, I don't blame Gen AI for it. I don't blame the law firms or the courts. This is really that person probably would have made that same mistake or error had they used something else. Clearly, citation checking, case law review was something they felt wasn't important. And I think that's a very nuanced, minor situation, not more broad across the industry.
Right. And I think that's a great point that you make, whether you're talking about law or any other industry, right? I mean, you should be doing this type of work. This is why we will always need humans in the loop. But I think what's so interesting by eliminating a lot of the tasks that generative AI can support, the art of law, Cindy, or doing better work as an attorney, as an accountant, as a medical professional, this is what it leads to. It leads to better research because you're not spending time on these administrative tasks. I mean, something as simple as a PowerPoint, it could take 2 to 3 hours to format. Well, now you put, Copilot in there and you can work on the actual content and not have so much time taken away by the administrative part of it.
Mhm. I think that's exactly right, right? One of our AI projects involved helping a manufacturing client review dozens and dozens of cases where experts had testified. And that helped us better prepare our client for those experts. And it might not have been possible before, but with AI assisting on that project, it was something that we could elevate the level of advice that we were giving to our clients that can just be better prepared in the future. Right. So that's a perfect example of sort of combining industry knowledge with using AI and partnering with a client to solve one of their repetitive problems.
Yeah. So as we think about outlook here, Avaneesh, and from the funding side as it relates to legal tech in 2025 seemed to have one of the highest investment totals in US legal tech history. What's next for the industry? Do you expect to see that enthusiasm continue to grow? What areas do you think can use improvement? What solutions still need to be solved for?
I think the investments will continue. At some point, we'll have to realize what those investments mean to the initial founders or those companies. Where they're going to end up in the next 3 to 5 years? Are they going to be able to make that switch from being a VC back to a true enterprise grade technology that can withstand time? When I look going forward, where do we see investments coming in this space? I really do think expanding into workflows and automation will be an area that we see more and more interest going into. I'm hopeful that we see more and more attorneys think of ideas that can help their job, because the more ideas that come from the actual work, that to me is meaningful, right? A lot of us that practice law 10, 15 years ago, they're now leading these organizations. We don't know exactly what it feels like anymore, right? We're relying on research, we're relying on our friends who are still practicing. But I think ideation still comes from the law firm and from the end user. So Cindy's firm is a perfect example. They're on cutting edge of AI. They're really driving forward. I think we'll see more and more attorneys wanting to go work at firms like that because the tooling lets them actually be a lawyer. Right? We all went to law school because we felt like we were going to make a change and make a difference in either business or the community around us. But when you're bogged down by doing photocopies and mailings and doing just like basic formatting of a document, you're not practicing law. So the more and more the firm can invest in technology that helps a lawyer be a lawyer, I think you'll see those firms really grow and really do well and be competitive and get the best matters in the door. So those ideas of new tech, I think it's going to come from the firms and from the lawyers themselves. And it's our job as the enterprise grade software provider to bring it in-house, make it solid, make it secure, and deploy it across the ecosystem. So I think there'll be a lot of give and take here of how we see software grow in the next 3 or 5 years.
And Cindy, from your perspective.
I would second that. I'd like to see more agentic workflows. I'd like to see less context switching between different tools, right? And I think Litera is looking at how they can do that, right? You've got lots of different tools, but you shouldn't have to switch between them all the time. Help me accomplish a workflow and incorporate Gen AI into that without me having to leave the places that I love, which for most lawyers are Outlook and Word. So I agree.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this transition with agentic AI kind of being the topic du jour these days. Appreciate both of your insights. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.